Welcome to Professor Pincushion. In this tutorial, I'm going to be going over tips and tricks to working with leather, suede, and vinyl. My example will be done in leather, but the same concepts will apply to suede and vinyl. When you find a store that carries leather, they probably will sell scraps. So if you only need a small piece, this will probably be more economical. I recommend your first project be small and consider mixing leather and fabric. Make sure that the leather you choose is the thin and lightest weight possible. Otherwise, you may need to stitch it on an industrial sewing machine. Also, talk to the salesman about the care of your fabric. Chances are it'll be dry clean only. Now we're ready to start cutting out our pieces in our leather. The first thing you want to do is lay it out, just a single layer. We're not going to be folding it and trying to get two pieces out of one pattern piece. You're definitely going to want to cut everything individually. But the first thing I look at when I'm looking at the right side is just to inspect it for any blemishes, such as right here. If I don't want this, I'm going to kind of try to avoid this area. So I'm just going to lay my pattern pieces where I would like. Now we cannot use any pins for the leather. So if we use a pin, it's going to cause a hole. So we're just going to kind of avoid it altogether. So any pattern piece that I'm going to use, I'm going to transfer it either to cardstock or cardboard or cut it out of a manila folder, something kind of thick. You're going to lay it where you would like it. You can use a ballpoint pen and trace around it and then use your scissors and cut it out. Or I like using the rotary mat and cutter and just use a weight on it, just using this can. And with it being weighed down, you can use your cutter and very carefully just cut it out. Of course, you'd want to use a smaller blade if you're going to be doing a lot of curves. So after it's cut out, then we can start stitching it together. Let's say I wanted to sew a seam in between these two scraps that I have here. Now we need to do a little bit of prep work. So since I cannot use any straight pins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this double-sided craft tape or sewing tape, and I made sure that I read the directions so I know that it's not going to gum up my needle. I'm just going to pull it off, and it's only 1/4 inch in width. I'm just going to put it right along the side of where I'm going to be doing my seam and then placing this on top of it. So that way it's temporarily just going to hold those two pieces together so I can go ahead and stitch my seam. Now sewing with leather, you really have to pay attention and make sure that you're not making any mistakes because you cannot remove the seams and not have it show. Once the hole goes into the leather, it's there for good. So that's why you really want to pay attention. Now, if you're making a project for the first time, I would probably recommend using some sort of substitute like vinyl instead of leather, so you don't make any costly mistakes. When I'm ready to sew, I'm making sure that I'm using a leather needle. You can go ahead and just use a polyester thread. You'll see my foot looks a little bit different. It's actually a plastic foot that has a coating on the bottom, so it makes it go over the leather a little bit more smoothly. Or if you don't have that, you can also use a walking foot. You may have to decrease the machine tension a little bit. It's a good idea just to play around with the scrap till you get the tension just right. And also you want to increase the stitch length. So normally my stitch length is about a 2.5. So now I'm doing either a 3 or a 3.5. So their stitches are just a little bit longer. And I'm just gonna go ahead and start and just sew as I normally would. Seams in leather don't lie down very easily. You can see this one's sticking up. Now what you can do is just press it down best you can and hammer it with a mallet. Or what I like to do, and I've already done on this, again, I get my double-sided temporary tape here, and I'm going to lay it underneath each side, because then I'm going to go ahead and do a top stitch on both sides of the seam, which I'll show you in just a second. So I'm just going to put it right there, press it down, there we go. And then flip it over to the right side. I'm going to go back to my machine and I'm going to stitch right along that seam line on both sides. On this side, you can see that I already started stitching alongside my seam line, and I'm just doing the other side. Now, of course, you'd want to use a matching thread color. I'm just using a contrasting, so it's a little bit easier to see. but definitely using a matching means it's less likely that you're going to see any little discrepancies or mistakes that you make if you don't sew it perfectly straight like I do sometimes. After I finish stitching both sides, I can go ahead and lift each side of the seam allowance and trim as close as I can to that stitch line. You can see I've already done it on this side. If you wish, you may press your leather. Just make sure that you do it on the wrong side, and I would use a pressing cloth to protect it, and also make sure that you don't have your iron at the highest heat setting. You can also use fusible interfacing if you feel like you need it. Now normally leather's pretty thick, so you don't really need a lot of stability, but if you do, I would use a fusible interfacing that doesn't need a high heat in order to fuse. Adding leather would be a unique aspect to add to your next project. Since it doesn't fray, you can use it for appliques, cut it to create your own fringe, or use it for trim. We hope you found our tips helpful in your next adventure in working with leather. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 150 sewing video tutorials. New tutorials are released regularly, so make sure to subscribe to be notified of the next release. Thanks for watching!